Listen to me very carefully. There is a very good chance the stock market bottoms tomorrow, that you start seeing the shorts cover tomorrow around the 61-point Fibonacci, fill the 18,600 to 400 area, down to the 61-point Fibonacci, 18,400. You can rebound, bottom out. The VIX is predicting a 95% chance. 95% chance that we have an update by the end of the day tomorrow. I think we're going to go lower, complete the divergences on the 60-minute charts, and I think you got a shot at the bottom. No guarantee, but you got a shot at it if support levels can hold. I will show you important support levels in this video. Watch the video all the way through, or you're not going to know the Fibonacci's and the gap fill trend lines that I'm looking at. Doji today on the VIX. There is a very good chance that that is marking the top for the VIX for now. Now, again, I told you we got above the 50 period. And again, when you get above the 50 period, and then we got above the 200, bad things start happening on the S&P. But the move could be done. The VIX is predicting 95% chance, because it was up yesterday by 22.5%. 95% chance we get a bounce or a bottom on Friday. 95% chance. And again, as I said, the only time it doesn't work is when we start going parabolic, when you start getting a pandemic sell-off, Lehman moment, and you start seeing the VIX just go parabolic. Could be that we have something like here where we had a doji, but then we still went higher, and then you got your black candlestick reversal bar. Could be something like that. But I'm just telling you, look, this is a possible reversal bar, or again, maybe we go a little higher and get something, but at this negative divergence. And the VIX is predicting that we will have an update for the S&P. At least there's a 95% chance based on that, on historical data from the closes. The VIX is higher by 20%. You got a 95% chance that in the next two sessions you're going to have a bounce or a bottom. Maybe we go higher than the doji like we did over here and get a reversal bar. Could start selling off sharply. That very well may be the case. I'm telling you, the VIX is predicting an update for tomorrow. We'll see what happens. It was up 2.33% today. We closed at 18.5. The VIX starts pushing above the 20 area on a closing basis. 19 highs on an intraday basis. You start closing above the 20 level, starts getting a much bigger sell-off and breaking the trend lines on the NASDAQ and the S&P decisively. We try to bounce off those trend lines and bottom tomorrow. Support level doesn't hold, forget it. We're at risk of a much bigger sell-off right here, right now. You got a good shot that a bottom can form on Friday. Support levels can hold. And you'll see those support levels if you watch the video all the way through. Please support the channel. Please support the channel with the link directly below that allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you like the chart, if you like the indicators, please partner with me and support the channel. Know that you want this information. A lot of time and effort to do this. I need to hear from you. I need your help in order to make it work. So please consider partnering with me. I just put it all out there for free and just ask that you help out with what you can do. And I do that because I don't want to get sponsors. They contact me all the time. I don't want to sell you a bunch of stuff or send you to websites where they want to overcharge you for stuff. If you want stuff, you can go to Stuff Mart. I need to hear from you in order to make it work. If you could just take a moment to step up to the plate and help out right now, I would really appreciate that. It'd be really encouraging to hear from you. I thank you for your consideration for that. Watch the video all the way through. I'm going to be talking about the 20-week moving average, the trend lines, our day moving average. We're at the make it or break it moment. Either we're going to get a bigger move down or we're about to bottom. Okay, we're about to bottom or we're about to have a big drop to 17,000 on NASDAQ. Moment of truth this year. We could bottom on Friday, possibly Monday, Tuesday. If we're going to bounce, there's a very good chance we're going to bottom on Friday if support can hold. I'll be talking about that in this video. Chance of a bottom tomorrow on Friday. Support can hold and we can go back up and fill the gaps, and that really depends on what the institutions are going to do. Are they going to keep selling or not? Moment of truth. We're about to have a really big drop, okay? A really big drop, like we've seen, a continuation of the previous 2 weeks, or we're about to bottom, one or the other, at key support levels. In a short-term bottom. I think NASDAQ's peaked. More about this shortly. Now, the market was all over the map today. It was down. It rallied big time, and then it dropped sharply. It's likely forming a bottoming process. The institutions make the decision to stop selling. could be in a bottoming process, rounding the 100-day moving average and the trend line of support on the NASDAQ. The GDP, tomorrow we're going to get the PCE inflation data. A very good chance the market can bottom tomorrow. We can gap lower, get a gap and go, and bottom out. S&P got an inverted hammer today. If it goes lower, it could get a hammer tomorrow. Show you the chart in the daily time frame. Back-to-back bottoming candlesticks on the S&P 500. A key level of support. Now we had the GDP come in 2.8%. That's higher than the 2.1%, which was the estimate. Keep saying two things. Markets top on good news, they bottom on bad news. Market topped in 2007 and 2000, had strong positive GDP numbers. Again, I continue to say, the other thing I continue to say is eventually we're going to see a negative number show up. Warning of recession. This number gets revised down later, but historically the markets have topped strong economic data. When the unemployment rate was just moving off of its lows, the GDP was strong, which is exactly what we have right now. The way the unemployment rate is pointing to a recession coming if the unemployment rate ticks up a little bit higher with the 3-month moving average from 1 year ago, as I previously have talked about. I've also told you that, again, I told you either this second quarter or third quarter will eventually come in negative. Now, it may not be this quarter, it may be the next quarter. This number will have multiple revisions to it. Actually, I think you're going to see a negative quarter. Number is strong, and we get it with the next quarter, the current quarter that we're in right now. And it's going to be pointing to that coming recession. We'll get the PCE inflation data tomorrow. The monthly numbers, the headline number is supposed to be 0.1%. The core month over month is supposed to be 0.2%. So it's supposed to be on the cooler side. Year over year is supposed to be lower than the previous reading, 2.5 versus 2.6, the previous month's year-over-year number. And the core is supposed to be at 2.6, coming in at the same level as the previous reading. Decision is about to be made. We're going to try to find a bottom at the support levels directly below on the NASDAQ, the 100 period and the trend line. Decision will be made to break that level, and we'll get a bigger sell-off. Now, let me just bring it up here on the NASDAQ daily chart. I've talked about the trend line. Here it is in the weekly time frame real fast. We're just directly above this trend line. This is the log scaling. I'll show you the linear scaling in a minute. We're just right above it. The 20-week moving average is right here. The 100 period moving average is directly below. Now, either the decision is going to be made to break through these levels this week or next week with the Fed and earnings, to bounce and go back and fill those gaps. A decision is about to be made. We're going to get a bigger sell-off and get the right shoulder completing right here, right now, of the head and the right part of the head formation, I should say. Or we're going to bounce here off the 20-week, off the trend line, the NASDAQ, off the 100 period moving average, and go back and try to fill those gaps and get something like this next week with the Fed that goes back up and gets a lower high, something like what we had over here. We peaked, came back up. The RSI made a lower high. We validated a lower high. S&P went to a higher high. There's a very good chance if the institutions stop selling and allow the retail investors run it back up on lighter volume. They did over here. They ran it up on lighter volume, and the institutions stayed out of it. See that happen. If the institutions are selling, people all over the internet right now that told us this was not going to happen. We've had 2 very, very ugly weeks. We just had yesterday the biggest sell-off on the NASDAQ that we've had since 2022. The biggest one-day sell-off. The people that told us that was not going to happen, and NVIDIA could not possibly go down. NVIDIA still hasn't made new highs, but I think it's going to bounce. People that told us this wasn't going to happen are now going to try to do the buy the dip. The buy the dip crowd. The problem with the buy the dip, if we've started a bear market, it's not going to work anymore. And that's what happened in 2000 and 2007. We sold off, and the buy the dip crowd came in. We rallied, but then we went down hard, continued to make a series of lower highs and lower lows. A friend of mine in 2000 doing that with all the Wall Street darlings, the dot-com bubble bursting, kept doing it. They were saying the same thing on the financial channels and on the very young internet at that time. Everywhere, the correction. NASDAQ stopped making new highs and it made a series of lower highs. Ended up wiping this guy out. He kept doing buy the dip. Markets go up, markets go down. Decision is about to be made by the institutions. They have the power to continue to push it down. They've got the money to do it. They can continue to sell, continue to see distribution volume, or we can find support around the 20 and around this trend line. And if you do, you can go back and fill those gaps. I think that there's a good chance it happens. I don't know that that's going to happen. We may not fill those gaps. Great Scott, did you hear what I just said? We may not fill those gaps. There's no guarantee we rally back up. The signals are still bearish. But there is a very good chance. Are you listening? There's a very good chance the market tries to bottom tomorrow. We try to rally back up. NASDAQ getting a lower high, maybe S&P moves to a higher high, and they do what they did back in 2022 and diverge. NASDAQ gets a lower high late 2021 in December and starts to sell off as S&P moved to a higher high the first week of January. They diverge from one another. I'm saying the bear market may have already started with NASDAQ and NVIDIA. If NVIDIA's peaked, then the bear market may have already started. This divergence is likely about to play out. Now, over here we had a divergence too. We had a divergence right here on the MACD, and we started to roll over. We peaked. It started playing out, but then it defied logic, and we bounced off that 20-week moving average. Do you see this? That's the blue line right there. And we bounced, and we went back up, and we got a lower high before the bottom fell out of the stock market, and we dropped 37.5%. It's the NASDAQ daily chart. NASDAQ was down just over 1% today. We had a rally, dropped like, 300 points. We didn't close at the low. We only ended down 201 points, but we were down 300 points. Moving to the 100 period, that's the little pink line you see down over here. Okay? And we rallied. We went positive. We had a big rally, but it fizzled out under the 200-day moving average in the 5-minute time frame. We went back. I think you're going to get this divergence. Now, the divergence in the 60-minute time frame. Now, the S&P is slightly breaching the trend line. Again, trend lines can change it, but if it gets a close and then you get a confirmation of that close below it, follow through, then we're going to go a whole lot lower on the S&P. But NASDAQ is just right at the trend line. This is a trend line from the 2023 October low. And again, we're right there. And look where the 100 period moving average is. We bounced up the 100 period. Last time over here, we slightly violated it. See that happen again. If we continue to go lower, then again, the head and shoulders plays out immediately. Then it's possibly in play. If the pattern will complete or not, but the formation will continue to develop towards our 200. If we bounce here, but I think we're going to go a little bit lower. And I think you're going to hit that 100 period. Maybe you violate it. But then I think you could close positive tomorrow because the VIX is predicting it. As I said, the only time that doesn't work with the VIX is when it starts going parabolic. And if we start breaking these trend lines, start soaring, and we start seeing the VIX begin to soar the 20 level. It's going parabolic. That's when it doesn't work anymore. When you get a Lehman moment or a flash crash or a pandemic sell-off, something like that, where the VIX just starts going through the roof. It goes from 10 to 30 to 40 to 50 and higher very rapidly. That's when it doesn't work. VIX is predicting we're going to have an update tomorrow. I think you can bottom around this area. The cloud, the 100 period, and the trend line are support. That is the case. We can go back and fill the gap that we had yesterday. Again, that largest sell-off that we've had since 2022. And we can go back and we can fill the gap up here, and that's at the 20,400 level, 20,398 to be exact. So again, can we bottom here? Bottomed over here. There was no bullish divergence. There is no bullish divergence here, but we came down and we tagged this extreme at 30 on the RSI, which we're right above it right now. You could tag it. You can come back up here, and you could come back up and you can validate a lower high like you did. That weekly chart, or the RSI just may move up to extremes again, but not move to a new high and end up, again, forming a divergence at extremes on the daily chart, but not on the weekly chart. However it plays out, look, very good chance NASDAQ is topped. NVIDIA has. We can bounce here. There's a very good chance we're going to move, fill the gaps. If that's the case, there's a very, very good chance you're going to try to bottom right here. And that bottom can happen tomorrow, early next week on Monday or Tuesday. And I'm just telling you, look, my signals remain bearish, but I'm telling you a decision could be made. The bigs to put it up, to allow a short-term bottom, the buy the dip crowd comes back in, and we start rallying with the Fed. The Fed meetings give us tops, bottoms, and continuations. We sell off with the Fed further and break this level, then you've got a continuation. You've got a continuation of the trend. If we rally up with the Fed, again, you could form a top to go back up and fill the gap here, and that rally could start. If we get an update tomorrow, maybe with the PCE data. Question now, the $64,000 question is, are we going to just break this level now and keep going down to the 200, to horizontal support, okay, to 17,000, or are we going to try to bounce and go back and fill the gap? That's the $64,000 question. I don't have the answer to that because my signals are bearish. Instances have started to play out. It all depends on, are the bigs going to stop selling or not and let us get a relief rally? And it really it depends on, are they going to break this support level and break the 100 period and break the cloud right here, right now, or not? Get a big sell-off like Bitcoin had, and I just the 200 and overthrow it right here, right now? Or do we make an attempt to go back and fill those gaps and then get it, and then get the sell-off if the top is in, which I think there's a very good chance that that is the case. The 100 period, the trend line, the cloud right here, directly below, I think we'll tag it tomorrow on the 60-minute chart. I told you I thought we had a 5-leg push lower. I think this move from the top right here is a 5-leg push lower. I think that you can get an ABC move back up to fill the gap up here, okay? And then again, a bigger sell-off. If we bounce off this level, there's a good chance we're completing a 5-leg push lower. Are you picking up what I'm throwing down? There was no really bottoming candlestick here with NASDAQ. S&P did get one. It got an inverted hammer. Here it is up close. Now, the S&P had that divergence. I told you about that at the top. Again, warning signs that this was going to happen. I showed you those signals, which validated this divergence. But I told you we still may go up and fill this gap right here. We still may go up and fill it. And I didn't draw that very straight. We still, because the gap is right at the top. The close is right there. We went and had, we closed at the highs, that peak bar, and NASDAQ didn't. NASDAQ had sold off, came back at a lower high, and then it gapped down. NASDAQ's had a much bigger sell-off. An inverted hammer. Maybe we go down and you get a bullish hammer. You get a bullish hammer and we get a positive close. You get something like that. Okay, and we violate the trend line. We violated the trend line ever so slightly today. I'll show it to you in a moment. But we broke down from this rising wedge. And I think if we do have a 3-leg push down, is what I think is what it is. I think S&P is going to go make a new high and come back up here and diverge like it did in 2022. And we go fill those gaps on NASDAQ and it gets a lower high along with NVIDIA and the semiconductor ETF. And if so, I think the RSI comes up here. Either we end up seeing a triple divergence, or it moves and forms a brand new divergence up here at higher levels. We'll see how it unfolds. But I think there's a very good chance that you can bottom out tomorrow. I hope you hear what I'm saying. If support can hold, because if it doesn't, you don't get a rebound. It starts going parabolic, and we start breaking that trend line on the NASDAQ, and the S&P is already trying to break it out below. I think you got a good shot that we go back and fill these gaps, and that they try to let a bottom form. I think that could form a large divergence here on the MACD down below right here. But keep in mind, if we do rally back up, Pring parameters already getting this bearish divergence with the S&P. So again, the 2022 top, we went back up and we went just a little bit higher than that previous peak. And again, the same here. So the head may not be here. We still may have the pattern, but it may be that we do something like this, go up here or a little bit lower or a little bit higher, whatever, and then come back down. I wanted to bring this up close because I want you to see the inverted hammer just below our 50-period moving average. Again, you got the cloud directly below. I think we can try to get bottom tomorrow or early next week, but we are breaking the trend line. I forgot to mention one other thing, the Fibonacci retracement. NASDAQ 100 Fibonacci retracement. I forgot to tell you that right below our 100 period. at that 18,400 level is our 61.8 Fibonacci. I think we can go there, hit the lower end of the cloud, and bottom out and go back up. And whoop, I went too high with that, didn't I? Go back up and get an ABC move to go back up and fill the gap at 20,400. But I forgot to mention that of this entire advance, the Fibonacci, 61.8 Fibonacci is just below our 100 period moving average at 18,411, 18,411 and a half. So again, I think that there's a good chance. Wait a minute, my upper boundary moved on me. Sometimes when I hit save, trend lines and things move on me here. The Fibonacci's moved on me. Okay, it's 18,392, just under that. So just under that 18,400 area, I think it can hit the 61.8 Fibonacci in that 18,400 area, and I think NASDAQ can bottom out. We could rally with the Fed meeting. Fed meetings have been calling the tops, bottoms, and continuations. If we rally with the Fed, might validate a short-term bottom to give us a top should we get a lower high, or if we break the trend line, it could be a continuation move with the Fed of the trend. I want to show you that Fibonacci though. Nevertheless, I digress. We are breaking the trend line. Back to the S&P. We got the inverted hammer. We are breaking the trend line. Now listen to me. Trend lines break all the time. When we had the October 2023 low, that trend line broke slightly and we went lower. But then, it changed. Angle of ascent changed. It could be that we get it the same thing here. If NASDAQ finds support at the trend line, S&P might overthrow it, or maybe we get, we got to close here just below the 50 and below that trend line. Now you need confirmation and a follow through. If you don't get it, this is right, and we have an up day on Friday, well, maybe you get a little bottoming tail at the cloud here, and maybe again, end up closing higher back above the trend line. And if so, we could redraw it, the bottoming tail on Friday, or from the low that we had there on Thursday. So we'll be watching. And NASDAQ's not violating the trend line. S&P is. NASDAQ can bounce off the trend line, reach it, but then get back above it. A shot at a bottom Friday, Monday, or Tuesday. So you can go back and fill these gaps. If so, S&P can go to a new high like what we did in 2022 at the January top. If that happens, MACD can end up staying in positive territory and going back up and end up forming a divergence before all is said and done. Trend lines on the 60-minute charts, they've been broken, okay? But we have these other trend lines going back to the October 2023 low that now could act as support, but we break them, that's going to be extremely bearish. I'll be watching to see if the S&P tries to rebound back above the trend line showed you and on the weekly chart before all is said and done. But here, these trend lines are toast now. Again, I told you the RSI had moved to a new low yesterday. So again, there's the possibility of a divergence. I think that divergence is going to happen on Friday, and I think you got a shot at a bottom. If that divergence can complete right here, we'll see what happens. Death cross on the 60-minute chart with NASDAQ, we could get it tomorrow with the S&P though. And again, that could risk for a bigger drop if NASDAQ starts losing the trend line. But same thing here, MACD, just like the NASDAQ and the RSI as well here on the 60-minute chart. The divergence likely completes tomorrow, and I think you've tried to find a short-term bottom. And if the VIX is correct, we'll close positive. Maybe the stock market bottoms tomorrow at key support. The S&P can rally big. It will rally up off of that trend line. Weekly time frame. There's a log scaling. Again, we broke it. We're above the 20-week moving average. We can bottom. I'll be watching to see, do we end up closing back above this trend line, but we have slightly breached it. And if we can end up going to a new high, you can end up forming a divergence right here and diverging with the NASDAQ like we did over here. We went slightly above that high, but then formed a divergence at the 2022 top. NASDAQ got a lower high. That's assuming the gaps get filled. I think you probably got a pretty good shot that that's going to be the case. I think you got a pretty decent shot. We could try to form a short-term bottom. Thing here, look at the MACD. Look at the MACD. It's rolling over right now. And I told you that we got the red awesome oscillator bar starting the week off. That happened over here too, just like on the NASDAQ. But S&P went higher, bouncing off the 20-week. We're just above it right here. Maybe we hit that 20-week moving average, and then we bottom out. And the trend line slightly changes on the S&P should we going down to that 20-week moving average. TD formed the divergence, the November high over here, and then it still went higher. Got another reference point. We could see something like that happen here if we attempt to go back and fill those gaps. I'm saying that there's no guarantee. I hope you hear what I'm saying. There's no guarantee we do that. We've got this negative divergence that just may end up, taking us all the way down here to the 4,900 area. Get a big, sharp, ugly sell-off with the Fed or earnings or whatever, both. I'm telling you, if the institutions stop selling, the big stop selling, got a shot of a rebound. Those gaps. Breaking the trend line on the S&P. This is the log scaling. NVIDIA is just above its 28-week moving average. It may try to bounce there. It didn't reach it the last time. Here we are just above it with that divergence. We'll be watching. You go back and fill those gaps. But on the daily chart, I showed you the linear scaling, and we're just barely breaching that. The log scaling, we're breaching it a whole lot more. So again, if we end up closing at the levels we're at right now or higher, more than likely higher, is predicting will be higher than today's close. Tomorrow, by Friday's session, Friday's close, if we do, then this trend line on our linear scaling will still be intact in the weekly time frame, and we could still go higher like that. So again, a bigger breach there. And again, some people use linear, some people use the log. I use both. You get valuable information from both. I want to make you aware of that, and that's the trend line we've slightly breached there on the daily chart that I showed you with the inverted hammer. We'll be watching to see what happens, and very well may try to bounce here. My signals remain bearish. Possible we attempt to find a bottom and go back and fill those gaps. A strong possibility we could try to bottom Friday, Monday, or Tuesday. Take a good shot of a bottom tomorrow. If we just start breaking these levels of support, getting a decisive break of these levels, trend lines and the 100-day moving averages and the 20-week, we're above it here on S&P, but the NASDAQ's right at it, and it will open the door for a much bigger sell-off. Risk is this plays out immediately. MACD scenario is that we bottom out and we see something like this happen, and we buy a little bit of time where it just kind of goes back up and goes sideways, and we see the S&P go higher. I've been talking about this 5-leg push lower. I think that is what is forming here on the NASDAQ. I think that this final push down could be an extended fifth wave. We reached extremes on the RSI, on the 60-minute charts yesterday, but I told you we could still form a divergence. We still ended up going a little bit lower initially, but then rebounded back up. And again, yesterday, the lows over here were moving very deep that we could form another divergence. So again, I think that can complete tomorrow. I think we can finish and go beyond this low, but then get a bottom. And again, I think that could be the fifth wave of the fifth of the fifth here. And then I think you can get a rebound back up that can start a big ABC move back up to fill this gap right here at the 19,750 area or so, and then back up here to the 20,400 area. Told you back over here when we peaked on July 10th, we had that big sell-off. The 11th, we dropped 500 points, and again, big sell-off, rebound, big sell-off, rebound, big sell-off, attempted rebound, and again, probably the completion of this move, and then probably a reversal back up. The VIX is predicting a bounce or a bottom up day for the stock market, which we did not have today. We had a rally that fizzled out. 95% chance we have an up day by the end of the session tomorrow, even if we go lower. So I think the dip is going to be bought. I think we'll end up going lower. Maybe we start higher and we go lower with the PCE or whatever. Have some earnings as well. But I think there's a shot, no guarantee, but a shot that if we find support at that trend line, again, moving just a little bit lower, or even beyond it a little bit, but then bottoming out and starting a reversal back up. And again, completing the divergence here and eventually going back and filling these gaps. I told you over here when we first started to sell off, again, I told you we were going to likely rally back up and get that lower high in the golden pocket, probably at the 78.6 Fibonacci. We hit it right on the nose. Right on the nose, got a topping tail, and then we began to come down and we broke the trend line of the rising wedge on the daily chart, and this happened. Again, we could drop a little bit more, closer to a 10% drop, and then rebound back up if this is a 5-leg push lower, and if the trend line and the 20-week moving average can hold on the weekly chart, and the 100-day moving average if we find support around that 100-day. Listen carefully. You break these levels, closing below them, getting confirmation, a follow-through, signals remain bearish, forget it, it's over. We're going to go down to 17,000. You've got a shot at a bottom tomorrow or early next week. and bounce off of these support levels with the NASDAQ. S&P slightly violating the trend line. We'll be watching how it closes out on Friday. Forming a bullish divergence on the histogram here, and again, try to recycle back up on the MACD, forming its own little divergence there. If we go a little bit lower, we'll be watching these 60-minute charts closely for the Friday session. Momentum reached extremes. We turned back up. We got this, what looked to be a counter trend rally for a wave 4. On that close-up I just showed you, we have the head and shoulders on NASDAQ. It measures down to this gap fill down here at the 18,600 area. We fell short of that today. We fell short of that gap fill area. Again, I think we're going to come back and fill this gap and then probably try to find a bottom there. The measurement, we may go down deeper. The measurement of the head and shoulders measures down here to the low 18,000, right around 18,000, just under 18,400 area, maybe 350, just eyeballing it. If we get one more push down, you could try to find a bottom and then rally back up. We had a little miniature head and shoulders, and the measurement is down here at this 18,400 area. Our gap fills at the 18,600 area. We'll be watching these levels closely. We may even form another little divergence with momentum, like I'm looking for with the RSI, very similar to what we had over here with this low, where we went a little bit lower, but then we had that rebound back up, stalled at the 200 period moving average here on the 60-minute chart. So again, listen to me carefully. I'm telling you we may bottom tomorrow or early next week if this area of support can hold. I'm also telling you if it doesn't hold, look out below. I have no idea if it's going to hold or not. I can tell you what I think. That decision is not up to me. It's up to the institutions. Are they going to stop selling? We've become very oversold. Does support level hold or not? Says you got a pretty good shot that it will. There's no guarantee. This is the gaps are going to fill, but there's no guarantee. Speculation until my signals turn back to bullish. I'm just telling you, there is a very good chance Friday or early Monday or Tuesday that we form a bottom if these support levels can hold. I'm telling you it's possible we get a bottom on Friday as late as Monday or Tuesday. Also telling you if this level of support breaks, then we're likely going to get a much bigger dump down to 17,000 and to test the 200 period moving average. I have no say whether the institutions choose to break the trend line now or not. I have no say in that. Continue to sell, it's going to break. But if they stop selling, the retail investors come in, to buy the dip crowd, then we can go back and fill those gaps and do what we did back at the 2022 top. So S&P can move to a new high. NASDAQ can make a lower high. This looks like a 5-leg push lower. S&P looks like a 3-leg push down, so it could still go up and make a new high, diverge from one another, get a very large divergence there on the weekly chart. Back up at this top, they had a small divergence on the daily and the 60-minute chart between NASDAQ and S&P that marked this as a top. We could end up seeing a larger one. Divergences I talked about on the short-term time frames, the 5 and 15-minute charts, all they did was give us a bounce towards the 200 NASDAQ, and then it fizzled. It may be that we take out that low tomorrow. I think there's a good chance that happens, but then I think we can form the divergences on the 60-minute charts at the trend lines of support and the 100 period moving average. You got a shot at a bottom. It's on the 15-minute chart. Look at NASDAQ. We have this divergence. That gave us a bounce to the 50 period moving average, and then we turned down. I think we're going to go lower, but I think we're going to bottom out here, and I think it's going to be early on in the session there that we bottom out. Maybe we start higher and go lower, or maybe we gap down, however it plays out, or we just open flat and start going lower, whatever. But I think you're going to form a divergence right there, and I think that will produce a reversal, and then I think we'll come back and fill the gaps here and up here, and again, I think we're going to overthrow the 20,400 area, and I think you're going to get a lower high. So I think you've got a really good shot at a bottom tomorrow. Support levels can hold, or if we violate support levels on NASDAQ, but then end up closing above them by the end of the session, above that trend line. Should we violate that trend line, we're going to push a little bit lower here. So that gap at 18,600. Here we are, 18,830. That's about just over 1% lower to fill that gap. And then if we go down, as I said, to the 18,400 level or so, then we go down a little bit more. But we could just fill that gap and go down and bottom out. Good chance of a bottom on Friday. And sometimes we get the inflation data. Maybe it's supposed to come in cool. Maybe it's a slight miss or something on the year-over-year numbers or something, but the monthly numbers are supposed to be cooler. Sometimes you see it defy logic. We peaked on the cooler CPI data. So you can have people on social media, if we start to sell off and the number's cooler, they're going to be scratching their head and saying, what's going on? We're going down to form a divergence on the 60-minute chart and try to hit these trend lines of support in the 100 period and the 20-week on the bottom. But like I said, those levels break, and the NASDAQ is toast like Bitcoin was before I predicted the bottom there early July. Bitcoin, I think, is going to get one more push higher, and then I think it's going to peak and diverge with S&P. I think NASDAQ will get a lower high. I think Bitcoin will get a lower high and diverge like they did in 2022, the S&P 500. I think NASDAQ is likely peaked. I think Bitcoin has probably peaked. 15-minute chart of the NASDAQ here. A week ago on last Friday, I told you about this bullish falling wedge, and we broke out. I told you it was setting up. And again, I told you I thought we were going to rally back up, but I told you it was likely going to be a counter trend. A rising wedge, then that evolved into a head and shoulders. I told you about that when it happened earlier this week. We gapped lower, and we had this happen here on the S&P 500. We started to form a divergence here, and then we sold off during the session. Big rally back up to the 200, back above the 50, and then it failed. Again, I think we're going to get one more push down, the divergence on the 60-minute chart, but that was a price action today. We pushed lower, went up, and then went back down, and that gave us an inverted hammer on the daily chart. Same thing here with the 60-minute or the 15-minute chart I talked about with the NASDAQ. Again, I think you're going to get another divergence point here, and I think that's going to happen early in the session, and I think you'll bottom out, and S&P will find a bottom and maybe get back-to-back bullish candlesticks. Going on for the 30-minute chart, S&P, again, I think these divergences, we reach an extreme. I think the divergence here will form another reference point of the divergence there on the 15-minute chart. I think that these divergences could produce a reversal back up. I think the S&P will come back up and fill this gap and move to a new high and diverge with NASDAQ. I think it's got an ABC structure here. I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I think we get the 5 here. I think we had three-leg structure down here, and I think it's about to complete. So I think you've got a good shot at a bottom. S&P is overthrowing the trend line a little bit. It could do it further and rebound. Trend lines break all the time, but then reshape. Now, NASDAQ is just above the trend line and just above that 100 period moving average. We really didn't get a reversal bar, but the S&P did. So you might get back-to-back reversal bars with the S&P, but this trend line was slightly breached by the S&P 500. And by the way, here's the NASDAQ up close. I didn't show you that. Again, we came back. We already filled this gap. You got another gap down here, which I didn't mark, 18,600, which again is just below, our 100 period moving average. So I think you're going to move lower, but then I think you're going to try to find a bottom here. Maybe we go, down and then close higher by the end of the session. Eventually, I think we come back and fill this gap, and we're moving to extremes here with momentum. I think you got a really good shot. We're going to try to bottom out either Friday or early next week. And again, a good shot it happens tomorrow if support levels can hold on the NASDAQ. Make an attempt if the institutions will let us fill these gaps or not. Decision is about to be made. I'm telling you, we break, that's very bearish. You bounce, that's going to be very, very bullish.